Good morning. Did everyone sleep well? Wasn't last night special with Jerry and Polly? And all those new levels, 6 new pearls, wow. Yeah, it's incredible. Are you having a good day today? I hope so. Do you ever get bad days? I found something I'd like to read to you. Here are 11 ways you can tell it's going to be a bad day. You know it's going to be a bad day when you wake up face down on the pavement. You know it's going to be a bad day when you put your bra on backwards and it fits better. You know it's going to be a bad day when you call the Samaritans and they put you on hold. Or when you see the That's Life team waiting for you in the office. You know it's going to be a bad day when your birthday cake collapses from the weight of the candles. Or you put on the clothes you wore home from the party last night and there aren't any. You know it's going to be a bad day when you turn on the news and they're displaying evacuation routes out of your city. Or when your twin sister forgets your birthday. You know it's going to be a bad day when you wake up to discover your waterbed broke and then you realize you don't have a waterbed. You know it's going to be a bad day when your horn goes off accidentally and remains stuck as you follow a group of Hell's Angels up the motorway. And you know it's going to be a bad day when your wife wakes up feeling amorous and you've got a headache. Well, I hope you're going to have a good day today. I know we will. I hope we can give you some information to help you move your business on. But if we say anything you're not sure of, check with your upline before you do it. This is a tremendous honor for us to be here this morning, to share some ideas with you, and it's one we don't take lightly. We'd like to talk about dealing with people and building relationships. Lana Turner said, "A successful man is one that can make more than his wife can spend. But a successful woman is one that can find such a man." Although in the beginning Denise wasn't interested, today she's very successful and has a deep understanding of the business. So I'm going to let Denise kick off, and I'll be back later. Here's Denise.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. How are you? Well, as Dave said, it's an honor to be standing here today. Do you know, sometimes when I think back, I have to say I can't believe that I am stood here talking to so many people. This is really a dream come true for me. As I've already said, when we got into the business, I was so insecure with no self-confidence that I couldn't imagine myself being able to sell a product or talk to 1 or 2 people without getting hot flushes, butterflies, and being a quivering mess, let alone talking to this many. But I've always wanted to be more confident. I've dreamed of not necessarily something like standing here, but just to be able to walk into a room without blushing, to be able to talk to a few people without stumbling over my words, or to stand up in front of a room full of people without nearly being sick. As I said to me, this is a dream come true. But one of the reasons I wanted nothing to do with the business was because I knew it involved mixing with people. And when Dave mentioned selling products, well, there's just no way we could build this business. But as you know, Dave did it anyway. And as time went by, the positive influence of the business started to rub off, and I gained more in confidence. But even so, my people skills were non-existent. If you think about it, there's not very many places you actually learn people skills. We don't learn them at school, do we? But I can remember Polly Hartine saying, "There's no better school than this business to learn good people skills," and that is through the system, the books and tapes, and of course we learn it from the example of our upline. Now when we got started, I needed a lot of room to grow. And don't get me wrong, I still got a lot of growing to do now. And so do the new people that you get into the business. But Jerry and Mandy were always there to help. I never felt I was being forced to do something I didn't want to. I was encouraged all the way. And that's so important, as new people get into the business with many different things to overcome. And you need to allow people time to grow. You know, people aren't eggs, you can't hatch them. It's important to let people know that you care and to build friendships. It's a bit like gardening, really. I mean, you can't just plant a seed and expect it to grow and be healthy without maybe preparing the soil a bit, watering it when necessary, and keeping the weeds at bay. And when you have a small shoot appear, you don't pull it on it trying to make it grow quicker. Now, when it comes to gardening, it just needs tender, loving care, doesn't it? But in this business, you can't sponsor somebody, give them a kit and a board and easel, and then expect them to be on the same level as you. You know, you're going to work with lots of different types of people, and some of these people will be harder to get on with than others. But just give people time, and it's certainly going to teach you a lot of patience. And a good book to read to find out why certain people do things is Personality Plus. A book you need to read if you're helping a lot of people. And if you are actively building this business, that's something you will be doing, isn't it? Now, people can tell whether you really have their interest in mind. And it's so important when you're showing the plan that you don't look at people with pound signs in their eyes, in your eyes, or as a PV level. You know, if you think to yourself, if I get this person to 9% and somebody else to 9%, I'm going to be a direct. You need to let the prospect know that you're interested in them and talk about their favourite subject all the time. What's that? Of course, it's themselves, isn't it? You know, as it says in the book, Skills with People, and that book I find invaluable, I must say, because it covers everything when it comes to dealing with people. It tells you how to skillfully do anything with people, and it's such a small pamphlet, you can read it very often. Well, as it says in that book, people are primarily interested in themselves, not in you. Putting it another way, the other person is 10,000 times more interested in himself than he is in you. So it's so important to learn to be a good listener. A good listener always winds up far ahead of a good talker in the affections of people. Be enthusiastic when you show the plan. Let people see the sparkle in your eye and that you're excited and believe in what you're doing. And that enthusiasm will rub off. People want to be part of a winning team. Well, they may not understand what team yet or what the business is all about, but they'll be caught up with your excitement. It doesn't matter either where you are in life, what house you live in, or what job you do. As I said, people are looking for the sparkle in you. You know, I can remember the first time I met Jerry, and I knew from his attitude that he was successful, and because of that, I knew he must live in a huge home. Can you imagine the shock when we went to their first home for counselling and found that it was a small bungalow? But it didn't matter. You could tell from their attitudes that they'd been moving on, and they had and still have so many dreams and ideas. You know, I know people were sometimes shocked when they saw our last home, but it didn't matter because we were moving on. You know, I can remember moving to the home we're in now. I think we'd just gone Pearl at the time, and I was thinking, wow, however will I fill all the space in this house? But I did, and as Dave said, we're looking for another house because of all the wardrobes we've had to have built. But one day, somebody came for counselling, and this person had his own business and was successful in what he did. Well, we heard later on that he said to somebody, why the house that I thought was so wonderful was so small. Well, he thought because of Dave's attitude and the edification of the group that we'd be living in a mansion. Well, you can imagine how I felt, can't you? After I'd heard this, didn't he know where we'd come from? But perhaps he didn't. Then I thought for a minute, you know, this is the smallest home we're ever going to live in. How much further would the chap move on, unless, of course, he built this business? He had to work goodness knows how many hours, keeping his business afloat and keeping the bank manager happy. Where would Dave be when this chap had done half a morning's work and was having a cup of coffee to keep him going? Just getting up, I expect, or going for a swim. Do you know, I think we're doing the right thing, don't you? So what it boils down to is lifestyle, doesn't it? It's having no stress, no worries, getting rid of the worry lines on Dave's forehead, and being able to relax. That's what Dave's dream was. So it's important to find out what people's dreams and goals are. They may not understand or think they want a Mercedes or a BMW or more travel. It may be just enough for the wife to give up work or to buy some new curtains for the home. That's all we wanted when we got started. But the longer you're in the business, the larger your dreams become. I knew the emeralds and diamonds lived a great lifestyle, but I couldn't see myself in those early days living it. But you know, it's just one step at a time, isn't it? New people may not be able to see themselves shopping for clothes like the emerald ladies do, or travelling as they do. But as I said, it's just one step at a time. their dreams will expand. This business is great because your pin level will never exceed your personal growth. You grow and you're ready for more, and you grow and you're ready for more. You aren't just given everything, all the responsibility of a big group or lots of money when you may not be able to cope with it. You grow to meet it. But when it comes to skill with people, and this applies not only to new people but anybody, it's vital to give a good first impression. You know, most communication is non-verbal, and we're judged quickly by the first signals we give off. So isn't it prudent to put as many things in our favour as we can and work on that first impression? And one of the first things somebody notices is your dress. And if you want to give somebody the right impression of this business, you need to dress in business attire. Remember, to new people, you are the business, maybe all they've seen, and they'll be looking to you to see how much you believe and respect what you're doing. And if you haven't read the book, Dress for Success, I thoroughly recommend it. You know, back a few years ago when Dave changed his job for the first time, he had an interview arranged. And he went to the interview in his first suit he had, which was brown, who we talked about yesterday, and it wasn't very positive at all. Well, he managed to get through to the second stage, but only just because of the skills that he'd learned through the business and because of how his attitude had changed because of the business. But by the time he went for the second interview, he'd bought a nice positive new navy suit with a tie with red in it. Well, the interviewer mentioned after how much he thought Dave had changed in his confidence and attitude. But his attitude was obviously the same because of the business. But it was his suit that had changed and what had been noticed. And of course, dressing for business is just as important for women. Now, you don't have to spend heaps of money on clothes. All you need is a couple of suits or dresses that you can use as a sort of business uniform. And if you notice from the Emerald Ladies and any lady in business, it's best not to wear short skirts, low-cut blouses or trousers. It just doesn't look professional. You know, my 2 Amway dresses, as I called them, were all I had for ages. And when it came to clothes, I practiced delayed gratification for a long, long time. I can remember having to borrow clothes off my sister at some times to wear. Now, it's very different now. As I said, we're looking for another home at the moment just because of the clothes that I've got. But when it comes to creating a good impression, people will notice your attitude first as well when you meet for the first time. So as I said, be enthusiastic or quietly confident. You don't have to be jumping around the room. Just let people know that you believe in what you're doing. Most communication is non-verbal. In fact, as it says in the book, How to Start a Conversation and Make Friends, over 70% is non-verbal. So body language is important as well. And looking back now, I can see why I found it difficult getting on with people. I used to never smile. And I kept everything crossed, as I mentioned yesterday. I never gave anybody eye contact at all. So when you meet somebody, smile. This gives a strong indication of a friendly and open attitude. As I said, I never smiled. And whilst I was out with people walking through the street, I would never give eye contact or smile at them. But I started reading books like How to Win Friends. And as I was walking through the street, I started to smile at people. And it's amazing how differently you're treated if you do. As it says in that book, a smile costs nothing but creates much. Well, eye contact is the strongest form of non-verbal gestures. It shows you're listening. And if you nod, as I said, whilst the person is talking, this shows you understand what's being said. So first impressions are vital. Do you know, I can remember reading how an executive in an airline said, if somebody gets onto our plane and puts the table down in front of them and it's dirty, to them it means the airplane doesn't work properly. And isn't that true? If you think about it, when you go to arrive at a hotel and the receptionist isn't as polite and as happy as she could be, then no matter how good the hotel is, you focus on any faults. That first impression made all the difference, didn't it? So now you need to get the new people started. It's important to plug them into the system as quickly as you can so they can pick up on these skills as well and also help them grow. As I said, it was because Dave started the business and I had the system around me and because his attitude changed that influenced me and my attitude. By reading books, I grew in confidence. It's continually reading the books that makes you strong. It's just so important to read. You know, it reminds me of the time I gave up smoking. And you know how some people are after they've given up, how they hate to be around smoke, and they become almost obsessed and talk about it all the time. Well, I was like that. I must admit, I was terrible. But it's only because I knew how much it helped me and my health to give up. And I'm the same with books, you know. Because I know how much they've helped change me, because I've been reading them now, I tend to talk about them a lot. You know, it's something you need to do. And by listening to tapes, I became more enthusiastic and excited. Because not only do they teach you skills, they also tell you people's stories. And I love to hear people's stories because it makes you realise how other people have gone through similar things and situations to you and how they overcame them. But of course, I've learned a lot from Jerry and Mandy, because our upline are always our role models, aren't they, for us to follow? And so will you be to your group. You'll be duplicated, which is fine if you're doing the right things. But build relationships and become a friend with people in your group so they can confide in you if needs be. Do you know, sometimes it could be a very small thing that can hold people back. It's something that may not even relate to the business at all, but all it needs is for that to be out in the open and for it to be known that it won't go any further. That can help somebody move on. I feel sure that's happened to a lot of people here, just as it's happened to Dave and I. When you're at a function, make a point to talk to new people. You know, I used to go to functions and make Dave promise not to leave my side. And sometimes he didn't, but most of the time he did. But he was away talking to new people, making them feel comfortable. And Mandy would always make a point of coming over and talking to me, until I plucked up courage and started going over and talking to her. And that was a growing stage for me. Now, I've changed now, and Dave says it's the other way around, and he has to try and find me at functions. But there's been lots of growing stages, and sometimes they'll be uncomfortable, but you have to go through them. It reminds me of children, because children go through growing stages as well. And when they're learning to walk for the first time, and they're toddling across the floor and they fall onto their noses, well, what do? You don't pick them up and say, there, never mind. We won't let that happen again. We're going to carry you for the rest of our life. No, you pick them up and stop them crying, and off they go again. So Matthew's going through a stage at the moment where he wants to do the same as Jonathan. Jonathan's 2 years older than him, and sometimes I'm watching through the window and I'm worried to death, I must admit. But he's going through a growing stage. He wants to do the same. He wants to jump off the walls that Jonathan jumps off, even though he's covered in bruises and scratches because of it. You know, it's just a growing stage. And it's the same for me the first time I crossed stage. And I must say, seeing the confidence in people crossing stage nowadays really excites me. But the first time I was so scared, I wouldn't say a word. I just clung to Dave as I got up there. But when I got off the stage, I just felt so good. I wanted to run back on and do it again. And that's how you'll feel when you've achieved something. You just feel so good inside, don't you? But you're going to be duplicated. You know, we teach by example. Well, are you doing what you teach? And speaking as a woman, I know this is something we tend to watch very closely. Things like, you know, are you using all the products? You know, people will look to see if you do. Can you imagine if I went to Jerry and Mandy's house and found they didn't use Glister? Well, it just wouldn't happen, would it? Well, the same applies to you. If you use a negative product, you've given your group permission to not only not use that product, but any other product they may choose not to. Can you see how that would duplicate? Now, I've mentioned smiling, but it's the same when it comes to answering the telephone as well. Always smile when you answer the phone. That will come over in your voice. People will be relaxed about speaking to you. Whereas if you don't smile, people will assume there is something wrong, and they usually think it concerns a business. And a tip here is don't wait to find out who's actually on the other end before you're happy. It's so funny when I ring people up and they answer the phone, hello? And as soon as I say, well, it's Denise here, how their voices change, they're really excited. Be happy as soon as you pick the phone up when you answer it, no matter who it is on the other end. But if you pass negative downline, that's going to be duplicated as well. And it's one of the greatest killers of this business. Now, if you have a situation you can't handle, then take it upline. How's it going to help if you do pass it downline? It won't. And remember, that's your financial future. There is no situation that hasn't been handled before, so always go upline with things like that. Set the mood for your group. Try not to let negative situations affect your attitude. Now, you find, don't you, that some people are constantly complaining. Not so much in this business, but occasionally there is somebody who moans if a plunger is missing or if his tape cover is cracked. Now, have you got anybody like that? I hope not. But learn not to react to these situations. And I know sometimes that isn't easy. You feel like saying, don't be so silly, you know. How's that going to affect anything? Will it really matter in 2 weeks' time? Or sometimes something even worse. But then you aren't setting the mood for your group, are you? You're reacting to their mood. Now, all the things I've mentioned are important when it comes to creating a good first impression with people and dealing with people. But you have to look for the good in people. See them for what they can be, not what they are. And the book See You at the Top goes into great detail about this. You know, it says a lot of people have gone a lot further than they thought they could because someone else thought they could. And that's certainly true for us. Jerry and Mandy believed in us a long, long time before we did. There's also a story in See You at the Top that explains this even fuller. And that is how an experiment was carried out at a school where children were split into two groups. And one teacher was told, "You're in luck. The children you'll be working with are genius kids. They are so bright it's frightening. They are extremely intelligent, but one word of warning, they're so bright they'll try and fool you. Some of them are lazy and will try to con you into giving them less work. Don't listen to them. These kids can and will solve the toughest problems if you give them your vote of confidence, along with some daily injections of love, discipline, and genuine interest." Well, the second teacher was told, "You have the average children. They're not too bright nor too dumb. They have average IQ, background, and ability, so we expect average results." Well, naturally, the genius students did better than the average students. As a matter of fact, at the end of the year, they were 1 full year ahead of the average students. And I'll bet you don't have to be a genius to figure out the end of this story. In fact, there were no genius students. They were all average students. The only difference was in the attitude of the teacher. The teacher thought the average students were geniuses, so they were treated like geniuses, expected to perform like geniuses, and they did. It's true, the way you see people is the way you treat them, and the way you treat them is the way they often become. So look for the good in people as your upline looks for the good in you.